Good to be here today with Mark. Mark is one of the leading forward-thinking educators in terms of the potential of virtual reality and augmented reality to enhance learning and preparing young people for the future. And Mark, you're here in Paris, and it's great to see you. But what brings you to Paris?
So after doing a little research, I saw that there was a lot of VR, AR development going on here, starting to become a tech hub.
Yeah.
And I thought I want to be where that is to learn from the best. So.
Yeah. Well, it is interesting because I live here, so I kind of by surprise found this out myself. But there are some really amazing, talented startups in AR, VR, especially, and AI. But they're actually in this facility that we're in right now.
Right.
A lot of them, Station F. So it's a nice advantage because you get to kind of connect with people. Sometimes serendipitously.
Yeah. Right.
So, for example, this morning we were talking to a company called Uptail, which is developing VR experiences. What do you think of what they're doing?
It was kind of stunning because the last look I had at 360 video, the big drawback was it wasn't interactive.
Yeah.
And so this completely cuts away that disadvantage, and now it's become something that is very marketable because you can assess the learning, you can sequence and control the user. You can't control where they look, but you can now control the sequence of events, ensuring that they're actually learning the things you want them to learn.
Yeah. And from a designer's point of view, the ability to kind of monitor the user's behavior, see trends and all that can help you, to rethink how have I set this up and how might I rethink it.
Right. Right. And I think of course, my students would love to participate in that, but also the tool that they made to develop those things is so user-friendly that I feel like you show them a 5-minute, here's a quick 1, 2, 3, and then let them go, and they'd be able to make some stuff.
Yeah. So this is a question I wanted to ask you. So I'm not a coder. My background is in history.
I'm really not either.
Right. Okay. So but I know that, for example, C## is really a valuable skill, but I don't have the grit to learn it myself. So I prefer platforms like Uptail, where it's kind of drag and drop and all that stuff. So I have 4 kids, so this is more from a fathering perspective. Like, how important do you think it is for young people to learn how to actually code in a language? Either because the language itself is a valuable skill, or just beginning to think in that way.
So I have a 7 and a 5-year-old at home, a 7-year-old girl, 5-year-old boy, and my approach to this from a fathering perspective and thinking like a teacher is that I want to make it fun. And so I got my daughter like my Raspberry Pi with Kano OS, which is a free operating system. It's got some Linux games. It's got some computational thinking, drag and drop coding, Minecraft stuff. It all comes free with it. And so I put it there, showed her some of the game-like things, and then just leave it alone. I don't force it on her at all. And she naturally is drawn to it because it's actually fun. And so she's already learning those types of things. And I think sometimes as educators, we will jump in and say, well, all kids need to learn how to code. And so we throw them into these things that, as a friend of mine says, it smells like school. And as soon as coding smells like school, they hate it.
Exactly. Yes.
And so, or it's out of context. They're like, well, you're going to learn to find the value of X because that's coding. And coding's important. Well, it is in context. And so I feel like I want to give my daughter a taste of that, and even my high school students. I want them to understand the basics of coding, but why are you learning that? That's why I'm doing the VR app stuff, is I want them to learn, well, I want to make this game more interactive. That's when you need to learn coding. So now they're asking to learn the coding instead of me saying, you need to go learn all of this. It doesn't work.
Are you seeing that there is a lot of that conversation where now we have to have a graduation requirement that everyone codes before they...
I am seeing some states are doing it as like a science requirement, or like my intro to programming is a math requirement, meets a math requirement. Not so much that it's required that you learn to code, but my class is satisfying other requirements, so they're loosening those standards.
I love that. Do you think schools are starting to move in that direction, where instead of 3 years of hard math, like you can take, computer science?
A lot of states are going that direction.
Excellent. Yeah. That whole idea that you have to pass Algebra 2 before you graduate has ruined many kids' lives. And
they hate it. And now I actually have some kids, now that the word is out, that are taking my class just for the math credit, and then they end up liking the computer science elements of it. So, and again, it's an intro to programming class, but it's software development. We do paper prototyping of all things to learn how to break down problems into just what you need, making a minimally viable product, and then develop from that. And so I like the whole package, real world,
Yep.
total package.
Totally. Well, speaking of real world, so we were talking earlier that Unity, which is a program that very few people even know exists, is actually already one of the most valuable skill sets you can have to for the world of work. But going forward, probably it's just going to become more and more of a valuable skill.
Yeah.
So this is something you're doing with your students. What are people who haven't played around with it? What are some of the exciting possibilities of Unity?
So, first of all, Unity developers, like on LinkedIn, number 7 in demand skills. It's a software-specific skill.
Yeah.
But the exciting part is that my students become creators, but they develop for humans. And so they integrate all these different skill sets, not just coding.
Yep.
And so they can make games, which is a lot of what draws them into it. I have a game design class
Yep.
that I do some Unity in. It's not all Unity yet. But the exciting thing is that they can create something and then publish it to just about any platform, mobile, web,
Yep.
Windows, Mac, all within a semester. And there's lots of support out there for if they want to take it further beyond that.
Yep.
And it's a set of skills that transfers really well. So
Yep.
you start learning the coding and the interface of the platform. It transfers to the other software, like Unreal is another good one.
What's your thinking in terms of like creating worlds, which seems to me like a real mindset and skill set of the future? Like, do you see some of that already going on? Like, are there some examples that have been really cool?
So what I did to determine what I'm going to teach in the classroom, I went and looked at what all these other companies are doing. Yeah. And like Walmart, for instance, when they trained employees and they sent Oculus Go's to every supercenter in the U.S., they were using, I don't know if it was Unity or not, but something, but they made a virtual environment.
Yeah.
They didn't use 360 video.
Right.
But then another large company, they do. Lockheed Martin, that makes helicopters and ships, they're making complete VR experiences in Unity. They have a team of Unity developers.
Yeah.
And they do everything from like a reachability test, like if they design this interface for a battleship, can the user reach all of the controls around them? But
it seems like, the more you understand what its potential is, the more you can see how it might apply in medicine, how it might apply in education, and on and on down the list. VR, I feel like VR kind of got its first big industry use cases in professions that are especially dangerous, like firefighting, and oil industry, and things like that.
Yeah.
But it really is across the board something that could be transformative.
Yep. I was just at a conference last week, the AR/VR Summit in London, and they have the fire chief who's in charge of the fire chiefs. The UK is rolling out this fire investigation training.
Yeah.
And they use the photogrammetry to scan everything in, but you wouldn't have to if you had the 3D models and stuff.
Yeah.
Texture it, put it together in Unity.
Yeah.
And then make it interactive.
Yeah. So what are some scenarios that worry you about either education and where education is going, or the way that technology is changing our lives? Are there's some particular scenarios that are kind of
it's a big question.
Yes. Yeah.
From what I see in my classroom, I'm still thinking VR for a second, is the isolation of that, the dependency on the technology.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer in learning the soft skills that complement all of these skills.
Yeah.
So that's why we run the classroom business.
Yeah.
And I say, okay, I'll dial a phone number and hand the kid the phone and say, you need to accomplish these tasks. Get a quote, something.
Yeah.
And they hate it. They cite that as like one of the most difficult parts of the entire year for them.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be.
So they have to pick up the phone and call a local business that they don't know, or
Right. Get an advertising quote to advertise our business or something. Yeah, it's getting out of the comfort zone.
Yeah.
And in fact, just me being here in Paris, I've been sending out remind messages to my group of Grid 9 students telling them I'm out of my comfort zone.
Okay.
Because I want them to see that.
Right.
I'm not expecting them to do something I'm not willing to do myself.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And so I think that is really important, showing them those leadership skills.
Yeah.
And we talk explicitly about leadership, what good leaders are and what bad leaders are.
Yeah.
And so as far as fears of technology, it's not the technology I fear and its advancements, it's the dependence on it in the absence of the soft skills, creativity, collaboration, all the C words.
Yeah, that's well said. Yes. And do you find, with your experience with young people, that we're doing a good job of accomplishing both?
Nope. I think like my dad who taught me. We have a farm business, and we have 100 and some high school and college kids that work there. and he's always been teaching that. So that's been pushed upon me, has been the importance of those other skill sets.
Yeah.
Those hard skills are great,
Yeah.
but they're not as useful in a vacuum.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, even a hardcore coder, they're like, I want to learn how to program. Okay, you learn how to do that. But guess what? You're going to have a team meeting every morning that says, okay, what's your responsibility today? And you and you and you.
Yeah.
I mean, you'll be a code monkey your whole life and never move up unless you have good people skills.
Yeah.
And that's why we bring in guest speakers like that.
Well, people talk about reimagining education, and there's all sorts of ways that people say the same thing, but it really is just kind of tinkering with the current model for the most part. But like the sort of thing, like we were talking earlier about how every company is now a tech company, right? And basically that's true of every organization. If you don't have a grasp of how technology can help accomplish what it is you want to accomplish, then you're really you're a 20th century entity. So this is a hard question, I know, but do you imagine we will get to that point in education where we can break down, for example, these boxes, like now you go to math class and now you go to science, and the way the real world work starts to kind of be like a thread that education doesn't feel like school anymore. It feels more like the real world. I mean, do you have any optimism that we'll get to that point?
I think there are already pockets of it. Big picture learning, the high tech high, those types of things. The video, the movie, Most Likely to Succeed, you've probably seen. I mean, there's pockets like that, but I think it's going to take something. It's going to be a gradual thing, but it's going to be places like that seeing success that then transfer into the colleges accepting students that don't just have the traditional requirements, which we talked about earlier. And as those start to shift, then the restrictions on standardized testing and stuff are going to change. I don't think it's going to be this aha moment that the various state governments are going to say, oh, we need to encourage more of this entrepreneurial thinking. Not everybody's going to start a business, but everybody's going to have to think like an entrepreneur. You've heard that before. But I do have some optimism, and I think the best I can do is try to model what I think education should be in my own classroom and then share that out to other people. So,
excellent.
Big picture, it's going to be a long road.
But well, we were talking earlier also, though, about how that is not a one-way street. If we can bring the real world into schools, the real world has an opportunity to benefit tremendously from what young people can do. And you gave some great examples of like what that already looks like. Can you share a couple of those?
Sure. So my students and I started our grit9.com. I always got to plug Grit9.
It's the number 9.
The number 9, grit9.com. In fact, our radio spot says that. But we're an entrepreneurial class, tech and entrepreneurship, but we're also a club that's open to anybody. That we have meetings. But basically, we provide web design for local companies, churches, nonprofits. A large moneymaker has actually been photo scanning. We have a Epson's PhotoSmart that really kicks them out. And really, the kids have to do all of it's not the tech skills. The whole thing is not about the tech skills. I don't care if we don't make a dime. And I tell the kids at the beginning that, we're going to have budget, we're going to have financial goals, but that's not the end product. You are the product. And that's all that's important to me. And once they understand that, you build a trust. And that it does not function unless there's trust. There's a book called The High Trust Classroom by Lonnie Moore that talks about the trust tax and how if you don't have a good relationship with your students and they don't believe that you trust them, you pay the trust tax, which means everything's less productive. And you have to quiet down the class, those kinds of things. It's not an innovative classroom or functional. But so we have the Grit9, but we also do we use Grit9. We model all kinds of weird things. We basically just tinker, like I said. The VR drawing using Masterpiece VR that we partnered with the art teacher, where the students came in. Actually, they had groups of 2, and one would model it in clay and hand it to the other person, and that person would have to put on the Vive and then try to draw what they saw on the model using subtractive and additive sculpturing techniques. And then we 3D print that and had a little art show. 3D printed art show.
Excellent. Yes. Yeah, that's also something very, very exciting that I think people are not even aware exists yet. But the opportunity to create art in this 3-dimensional world.
It's a new medium. But I mean, to see it in the hands of like a true sculpture artist is amazing because it's marble and clay in free form. It's like if you've ever seen Picasso's light drawing with like a glow stick or whatever it was. Yeah, it's like that, but it stays there.
Yeah. Remind me, there's an amazing artist who's actually French, who is my favorite person to follow on social media. And what she's done, she goes to places like the Louvre, and she it's like performance art, but she'll create in real time, and people can see, on the monitor what she's doing. But
in VR,
it's in VR. I think she uses tilt brush.
Yeah.
But
love to.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Oh, I gotta check that out.
Yeah. Let's just put on the fathering hat again. Okay. So, in terms of what would be the perfect education for your children growing up, how would you describe that?
I like this the school district that my daughter is in, where my wife teaches. They have a pull-out STEM program. I really like that. In an ideal world, it's you get all the basics done. You have to learn the fundamentals. There's the triangle of the skill, the will, and I'm drawing a blank on skill, will. It's in the Most Likely to Succeed book. Oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank on that.
Does it rhyme with skill and will?
No, it's it's the content. I'm sorry, it's content. So of that triangle of learning, right now there's a hyper focus on content. Right, learn the content, spit it out.
Yeah.
But then what I teach and what I hope my daughter and son's teachers teach is you also need to learn how to learn other new skills. Right. So like in computer programming, it's here's a forum, here's how you post in a forum and do it properly, because you can't Google everything. Right. And obviously kids know how to YouTube and stuff like that. Yeah. Use YouTube, but the most important of those three is will. And so my biggest fear is that they're going to kill her will to learn. Right. And at home, I'm doing nothing but trying to foster it. Like, learning is fun, and making mistakes is cool, and all that kind of stuff. Yes. And so in an ideal school system, as long as they're fostering her will to learn, I don't care about the rest. I think she'll pursue what she wants to pursue when she's exposed to it. Yeah. And same with my son when he gets into school. So,
well, I think I agree with you 100%. I think that the real art in that is you're both fueling this will, this passion to learn, while also providing opportunities to struggle and even fail, and like getting that balance just right is an art. Right. And that's why sports are so magnificent, because you're just doing
the lessons learned,
right? Yeah. You enjoy it, but it's going to be hard.
Right.
And
you're going to take the loss sometimes.
You're going to cry sometimes. And how do we get more of that into what school looks like?
Yeah. And I mean, that's why Grit 9 is called Grit. Right. Angela Duckworth, her book by the same name, Grit, she defines it as it's the pursuing of something that you enjoy over a long period of time. And some people think it's enduring something you don't enjoy. No, that's not correct. That's just enduring. And so going back to what the ideal school system would be is, I want them to enjoy what they're doing. And so I have to find out what my students are about. Right. And get to know them and know what their interests are, and then let them pursue that. Yep. And use technology as a tool to learn that. I let them use anything they can to come to the answers. To solve problems.
Well, here's a question then. One of the things with Z School is always like, what are the constraints of schools, and how can you then try to break those down? And for me, one of the really big holy grails that is worth trying to figure out is how can we break down the constraint of geography, right? So my kids, grow up here, France. Your kids grow up in Ohio, and the opportunity for my kids and your kids to collaborate on something, or to learn from each other, or if it's a particular passion, to kind of push each other further, all those sort of things. Like, schools have never been able to do that because it's all about brick and mortar and geography. And do you see a future where that starts to break down, where schools, wherever they are, and students wherever they are, begin to create connective tissue?
So where I see that is just serendipitous interactions at like the ISTE conference and my OETC conference. Yeah. But teachers are having to actively make those connections and then help their students collaborate. I mean, I'm also a big believer in just having my students collaborate with the professionals in their area, because they're more apt to receive them if they say, I'm from local school X. Yeah. They're like, oh yeah, we'll help you out. But you're talking about collaboration across great distance.
So I mean, I'll just throw out a hypothetical, which is much easier said than done. But you and I both see the value in like entrepreneurship, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to have a really strong entrepreneurial team, the chance of that happening, it's like a great rock band, right?
Mm-hmm.
The chance of it happening in your high school are
Right.
not great.
Right.
So how can we have a space, almost like a social media type of platform, where it is very much about, okay, here are some moonshots or some big challenges that we want to solve, and there's a way for people to kind of come together around those types of things,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of where they live, right?
So odd that you say that. There's out of California, San Diego, there's a group called EdCorps,
Mm-hmm.
and they are they sponsor businesses in elementary through high school across the country,
Mm-hmm.
and they are creating a platform called EdSpace, which is, it sounds like they're trying to solve that very problem you're talking about. Is basically it's a social media platform just for education.
Yeah.
But
Called EdSpace.
EdSpace. They're in they're in open beta right now.
Mm-hmm.
I can send you a link to it later.
Yeah.
But they've put significant investment into that, and so whether that works or not, I don't know. But besides that, the only way for those large collaborations and those kinds of things takes the leadership of like an entrepreneurial teacher and finding other people that are doing that. I mean, there's platform you can use Twitter. I mean, I found you on Google and email and Twitter or something, and it's like, if you're looking for it, you're going to find it.
Right.
And so if the administrators put the trust in the teachers to do that and encourage it, and not just allow it, but actively encourage it, I think that those collaborations are going to happen.
Yeah, that's great.